Emma. We watched the game here at the Lost Patty. Watch part.
Nonetheless.
A win. Yeah, we were at the Lost Patty. Usually when I come to the Lost Patty, I see things that I'm not.
Because it's away. The only reason why we lose is because we're away.
So we won at LAFC, top of the league. Supporter Shield winners. We beat them away here at the end of the season. What are some takeaways?
I mean, look, end of the season is always a weird time to take stock from the last game, because the last game is always a little bit altered, right? They didn't really have anything to play for. They still played pretty hard, especially the first half. They played really hard. We could have gone really down 3-0 first half easily. Then we came back strong. Gary probably had some very intense words in the locker room, as he should have. You don't get to go to LA for the beach if you are on the payroll, and so that's important to keep in mind, because we got some trips to LA coming up. So yeah, I think in general the ability to turn the game around is something that I saw as a very good positive outcome of what was happening. The fact that legitimately looked like the very same team that lost to Houston last week for the first half, and then came back and put them on the ropes for 10 minutes. 10 minutes are enough. If you do your job otherwise, 10 minutes of really intense play is enough. So
it looked like a team that can turn the game around, looked like a team that can in some ways control some play. Were there times, but if it looked like we had to turn the game around, what was not working that made it so that things got away from us?
I saw mostly two problems. One of them is, as much as I agree with the 4-4-2 given the squad, I agree completely that that's the only way you can get all of your 10 best people on the pitch. One is not depending on the kind of formation you put out, right? But the other 10, if you want the top 10 people, you gotta put it like that. But I do think that the way he's putting down the four in the midfield, it's not really working. Specifically, I think because Davis and McCarthy both of them are two people who used to be very mobile, and unfortunately they're not anymore. And so basically they're both waiting. They're both waiting for people to come at them. And so that turns every time, if they miss a tackle, they don't miss always, but if they do, you're in trouble, because then you only get one person left. We saw them in the first half. That was the McCarthy Moore trouble.
That yellow.
Right. That could have been red. Maybe. I don't know. I'm being, yeah, it could have been. It could have been. There was another instance with Zimmerman involved. There were a few times, if you're waiting for them to come at you, if they're good attacking midfielders, you're going to be reactive. And McCarthy and Davis, because of a myriad of reasons, they're not as reactive anymore. And so waiting for people to come at them might not be the best chance, which I think is one of the reasons why Smith rotated Davis so much during the season. Because the idea was, okay, I want one who's able to attack the ball at least, and let the other one dive deep. And both of them together, I agree that they're our two best midfielders. They still they lose in terms of pace. So that's one of the main problems. I don't know if you agree with that assessment.
Oh, I think that it's very fair. I think that playing with 2 6s is also just it just makes it so that we just concede attacking midfielder space to so much of the other team, where it's unless we're playing someone as a sort of a low 10, we just concede so much of the midfield to them.
Right, and I mean it's not necessary to play a 4-4-2 that way, right? You could have, for example, McCarthy play in an 8 position.
Right. Yeah. Play with a 6 and an 8. Yeah. Right.
Even if he's not an 8 naturally, you can still have him push much more forward.
Well, so just as a side note about this, before Davis was our regular starter, it was generally the starter between McCarty and Godoy would play on top of McCarty, not as a second 6, but as a sort of an 8 maybe a 6.5 or so, 6.5 or like a. But he was playing forward, and so playing with 2 6s just concedes so much space. And so I agree with you. I think that like instead of it being like a kind of a 2 shield midfielders, kind of playing with like a diamond of midfielders in the middle is at the very least doesn't concede that space. Though it does make it so that our wingers or outside fullbacks don't get to go forward as much. So you play with the shield midfielders to cover for your outside fullbacks running forward.
Right. That's absolutely right. So the other thing that I see that can be improved, should be improved in my opinion, is that today there was nobody to keep the ball up. The ball was tossed away. Every time it didn't connect for an immediate shot, it just dissipated immediately. And that's part of the reason is that Schaffenburg and Mukhtar, who are the two people probably more comfortable with the ball on their feet, had a bit of an off game, both of them. I don't think that's happened all the time this season. I can't remember one last time since the turnaround of the season when Schaffenburg came in that they both had an off game. I do think like tonight in terms of control and in terms of just retention of the ball, they both were off. And so that combined with the deep midfield and the fact that you were playing Banbury, who, he's amazing in the last 10 yards, but he's not exactly Thierry Henry in terms of control and distribution of the ball, generated a series of problems of like, okay, we passed the midfield line. What is happening now? Like, it seems that there were very few ideas out there today.
So short on ideas once we were past the midfield. So maybe what would you like to see changed in terms of maybe design for the play? Do you think that Bunbury is a replacement? Sapong is going to be in there. This is just not going to be a concern that we have whenever different starters are in. What kind of change do you think that we need to see if offense and holding is going to look a little different?
I don't know. I mean, obviously with the playoff, it's not time for experiment. So I did like the experiment that Gary did earlier in the season to put Banbury out there, out on the right instead of Leal for a little bit.
Yes.
Because it just transforms entirely what they have to defend, right? But also Banbury is not a great, cover.
And he's not Randall Leal.
Yeah, of course. Like Randall is Randall. So that's an experiment that could be worth making if we had the time. But you don't have the time in the playoff. So you gotta stick with your squad. You gotta stick with who's comfortable, hoping that they've had time to gel. It wasn't a lot, but because Schaffenburg came in pretty late, and that completely transformed the team. But you gotta trust this. At this point, you're committed. I don't think there's a lot that Smith can do at this point. I actually think, like I heard you talking about the 3-5-2. I think that would be. I mean, it's not. I like the 3-5-2 in theory.
That's where I'm at.
In theory, I agree. With 1 week that decides your whole season, you don't get to risk, in my opinion. And I do think that Smith is gonna go that way.
I worry about us being too predictable. So, what are your hopes? What are your concerns?
I mean, my hope is that Mukhtar, now that he's got the whole regular season thing that he was doing on his own, without necessarily too much connection to what the team was doing, now that he's done it, whether or not he gets that statue, he can now commit to, let's just win one game, playing the best I can, serving people up. So if he commits, and if I don't know, maybe Schaffenburg can kind of tickle in a little bit, and Leal coming out to cover that other wing, we could have a little more solidity in the midfield.
I would like to see Jacob Schaffelberg being inside a little bit more myself.
Yeah. If those two things happen, there's no reason why you don't win at Galaxy.
A conditional about the Galaxy if we do these things. Okay, so last question. What do you think about next season? What do we need next season?
Cut your losses, release Akelaba, get a new designated player, You tried, you paid a lot of money. It's really not working out for anybody. You're wasting this guy's career, and he's wasting your money in a very important spot on the squad. That's an important thing. Second thing, get a mobile midfielder who's good with his feet. So kind of like best of both worlds. Like if Mule and McCarthy had a kid, I want to adopt that kid, and I want him to be captain of NSC.
Okay. Right. So we need to find someone who's like Oscar Pereira, but like not on the tail end of his career. Okay. So I guess the last. So I said last question, but I got one. I got one more for you. Who wins the East? Who do you think? Who are we going to play in the playoff game in the championship game?
In the final, I honestly don't see anybody beating Philly, and I think, and this is going to be controversial again, I think best player on the best team should get MVP. I do think
it's Gazdag.
I think Gazdag is a shoe-in, and he's deserved it. Like he scored one less goal than Mukhtar, but he's won.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So I think both Gazdag and Driussi have been part of teams that have been ascendant and incredible. I'm not going to undercut Hani's case for MVP, but I think that if Gazdag were to win, we could say well deserved. So that's who. So you think a matchup against NSC and Philly in the championship game then?
Sure thing.
All right. Emma, thanks for coming on NSC Fan TV.
Thank
Next
you, Scott.
time.